This is a story about a girl who had nothing left to lose, no pack, no rank, no future. A girl standing on an auction block where the broken are sold like cattle. But in one single moment, when the most powerful alpha in existence chose her from among the forgotten, everything she thought she knew about fate, power, and destiny shattered. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Seriously, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing where this pack spans across the globe. And hey, how are you doing today? I hope you're cozy, maybe with some tea or coffee, because this story, it's going to take you on an emotional ride you won't forget. Oh, and before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Trust me, you're going to want to be here for every single upload. This channel is growing because of you, and I'm so grateful for this community we're building together. Now, let's step into Aria's world. The Moonfall Auction hall stank of fear and desperation. Aria stood at the very edge of the platform, her bare feet cold against the worn wooden planks, her wrists marked with the iron cuffs that labeled her for what she was, unwanted. The hall buzzed with voices low, cruel, transactional. Buyers moved through the rows like wolves through a dying herd, eyes sharp and dismissive, looking for the Omegas who still had something to offer. Beauty, compliance, fertility. Aria had none of those things. She kept her gaze down, her long dark hair falling like a curtain over her face, hiding the bruise that still colored her cheekbone purple, hiding the exhaustion that lived in her bones, hiding the fact that she'd stopped hoping 3 days ago. Around her, other Omegas shifted nervously, some weeping silently, others standing rigid with forced composure. They were the rejected, the abandoned, the ones whose packs had thrown them away, either because they were too weak, too damaged, or too defiant. Aria was all three. Her former pack, the Ashwood clan, had made that perfectly clear. "You're a stain on our bloodline," her alpha had said, his lip curled in disgust. "No wolf. No shift. No worth. Get out of my sight." And so here she was, sold to the auction houses that trafficked in broken dreams. The auctioneer, a wiry man with slicked back hair and a voice like gravel, clapped his hands sharply. All right. Let's keep this moving, folks. Lot 17, step forward." A girl next to Aria flinched, tears streaming down her face as she stumbled toward the center of the platform. The buyers barely glanced at her. One sniffed. Another waved her off with a flick of his hand. "Too thin," someone muttered. "Damaged goods," another agreed. The auctioneer sighed and waved her back into the line. The girl sobbed openly now, her shoulders shaking. Aria felt the familiar ache in her chest, the one that came from watching suffering she couldn't stop. She wanted to reach out, to offer some kind of comfort, but what comfort could the damned offer the damned? Lot 18. Aria's stomach twisted. That was her. She didn't move at first. Her legs felt like stone. But the auctioneer's sharp eyes found her, and he snapped his fingers impatiently. "You." Edge of the platform. Front and center. Now. Her body obeyed before her mind could catch up. She stepped forward, her bare feet whispering against the wood, and stood beneath the harsh yellow lights that made her feel exposed down to her very soul. The crowd's eyes swept over her with the same disinterest they'd shown everyone else. Lot 18, the auctioneer announced, his tone flat. Female. Omega. 22 years old. No rank. No wolf. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. "No wolf?" someone called out, mockery dripping from every word. "What's the point of buying a broken Omega? Might as well sell us a dog," another voice added, and the laughter grew louder. Aria's hands curled into fists at her sides, but she kept her eyes down. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. That's what she'd learned. Survive by being invisible. By being nothing. The auctioneer cleared his throat, clearly ready to move on. Starting bid. Is this a joke? A woman in furs stood from her seat, her lips twisted in disdain. She's too weak to even hold her head up. What pack would want that? None, someone else answered. She'll be dead in a year. The words hit like stones, but Aria had heard worse. She'd heard it from her own blood. From the people who were supposed to protect her. The auctioneer's patience was wearing thin. Starting bid is 50 silver. Do I have? Silence. No hands. No movement. Just the cold, crushing weight of rejection. Aria felt something inside her crack. Not break, she was already broken. But crack a little deeper. She'd known this would happen. She'd known no one would want her. But knowing and feeling it were two very different things. 50 silver, the auctioneer repeated, desperation creeping into his voice now. Anyone? 40? 30? Nothing. The laughter had stopped. Now there was only pity. And pity, Aria had learned, was worse than cruelty. Fine, the auctioneer spat. Next lot. And then the doors exploded open. Not literally. But the deep, resonant boom of the heavy oak doors slamming against stone, might as well have been an explosion. Every head in the hall whipped toward the entrance. Every breath caught. Every heartbeat stumbled. Aria felt it before she saw it. Power. Raw. Ancient. Unstoppable. It rolled into the room like a storm, pressing down on her chest, stealing the air from her lungs. Her knees almost buckled. Around her, Omegas dropped to the floor, their bodies instinctively bowing beneath the weight of an alpha presence so overwhelming it felt like the gods themselves had stepped into the hall. Aria forced herself to look up. And her world stopped. He stood in the doorway, backlit by moonlight, his figure broad and unyielding. Even from across the room, she could see the sharp lines of his face, the cold fury in his eyes, the way his presence commanded submission without a single word. He wore black, leather and steel, and moved with the lethal grace of a predator who had never known fear. The Alpha King. Aria had heard the stories. Everyone had. Zane Blackthorn, ruler of the Northern Territories, the wolf who had united the fractured packs under his iron rule. They said his beast was a monster, that his enemies didn't die, they vanished. That he had no mate, no weakness, no mercy. And he was here. The crowd parted like water before him. No one dared speak. No one dared breathe. Zane's eyes swept the platform, cold and assessing, moving over the Omegas with the same detached scrutiny a commander might give a battlefield. Aria's heart pounded so hard she thought it might tear through her ribs. She wanted to look away. She needed to look away. But she couldn't. His gaze moved closer. Closer. And then it landed on her. The world fell silent. Zane stopped walking. His eyes, silver, burning, impossibly intense, locked onto hers, and Aria felt something inside her shift. Not her wolf. She didn't have one. But something deeper. Something primal. Something that recognized him the way the moon recognizes the tide. He stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. Like he was seeing home. The auctioneer stammered, "Why, Your Majesty, we weren't expecting." Zane didn't even glance at him. His eyes never left Aria. And then, in a voice that was low and absolute, a voice that made kingdoms tremble, he spoke. That one. The hall erupted into chaos. But Aria? Aria couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Because the Alpha King, the most feared wolf in existence, had just claimed her. And she had no idea if he'd just saved her life, or destroyed it. Aria's legs gave out. She didn't mean for it to happen. But the weight of every eye in that hall, the shock, the envy, the confusion crashed into her all at once, and her knees buckled. She caught herself on the edge of the platform, her palms scraping against splintered wood, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. That one. Those two words echoed in her skull like a death sentence. The Alpha King had chosen her. Why? It made no sense. She was nothing. Less than nothing. A wolfless Omega with no family, no rank, no value. And yet, Zane was already moving toward the platform, his stride purposeful and unhurried, like he had all the time in the world and knew no one would dare stop him. The crowd scrambled out of his way, their earlier mockery replaced by trembling silence. Even the auctioneer had gone pale, his hands shaking as he fumbled with his ledger. "Why, Your Majesty," the man stuttered, bowing so low his forehead nearly touched his knees. Of course. Lot 18 is yours. No charge, naturally. It would be an honor. I'll pay." Zane's voice was cold, final. He didn't slow his approach. "Double the standard rate. Have the papers drawn up." "Yes, Your Majesty." "Right away." Aria's heart hammered against her ribs. She wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to move, to hide, to disappear into the crowd and let this nightmare pass her by. But her body wouldn't obey. She was frozen, caught between terror and something else, something she didn't have a name for. Zane stopped at the edge of the platform, just inches away from where she knelt. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Tall, easily over 6.5 feet, with broad shoulders and a presence that made the air feel heavier. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running, and his silver eyes gleamed with an intensity that made her feel like he could see straight through her skin and into her soul. He studied her in silence. Aria kept her gaze down, her hands still pressed against the wood, her entire body trembling. She could feel his stare like a physical touch, sweeping over the bruise on her cheek, the torn hem of her dress, the iron cuffs still locked around her wrists. "Look at me." It wasn't a request. It was a command, spoken in a voice that didn't know how to be disobeyed. Slowly, painfully, Aria lifted her eyes. And immediately wished she hadn't. Because the moment their gazes met, something snapped into place. She felt it deep in her chest, a pull, a tether, a connection she couldn't explain. His eyes widened, just slightly, and for a fraction of a second, she saw something flicker across his face. Recognition. Not the recognition of a stranger, but the recognition of someone who'd been searching for something they'd lost. Zane's jaw tightened. His hand moved, and Aria flinched instinctively, expecting a blow. But he didn't strike her. Instead, his fingers closed around the iron cuffs at her wrists, and with a sharp twist, he broke them. The metal shattered like glass. Gasps echoed through the hall. Aria stared at her freed wrists, at the red marks the cuffs had left behind, and then back up at him. "Why?" The word slipped out before she could stop it, barely more than a whisper. "Why me?" Zane didn't answer. He reached down, his hand closing around her arm, not roughly, but firmly, and pulled her to her feet. "You're coming with me." "But Now." There was no room for argument. He turned, still holding her arm, and began walking toward the exit. Aria stumbled after him, her bare feet struggling to keep pace with his long strides. Behind them, the auction hall erupted into frantic whispers. "Did you see that? The Alpha King just claimed a wolfless Omega. What could he possibly want with her? Maybe she's a spy. Or a sacrifice." Aria's stomach churned. A sacrifice. That made more sense than anything else. Maybe he needed someone expendable. Someone no one would miss. Someone whose death wouldn't matter. They passed through the doors and into the cold night air. A sleek black carriage waited at the bottom of the steps, flanked by guards in dark armor, their faces hidden beneath helmets. One of them opened the carriage door without a word. Zane gestured toward it. "Get in." Aria hesitated, her heart pounding. This was it. Once she stepped into that carriage, there would be no going back. Whatever fate awaited her, whether it was death, servitude, or something worse, it would begin the moment those doors closed. But what choice did she have? She climbed inside, her hands shaking, and sank onto the plush velvet seat. The interior was far more luxurious than anything she'd ever seen: polished wood, soft cushions, curtains embroidered with silver thread. It felt wrong, like she was dirtying it just by sitting there. Zane climbed in after her and shut the door. The carriage lurched forward immediately, the wheels clattering against cobblestone. Silence filled the space between them. Aria kept her eyes on her lap, her fingers twisted together. She could feel him watching her again, that same piercing stare that made her feel like she was being dissected. She wanted to ask him what he wanted, why he'd chosen her, what he planned to do with her. But the words stuck in her throat. "You're afraid," Zane said finally. It wasn't a question. Aria swallowed hard. "Wouldn't you be? Of me? Of everything?" He leaned back in his seat, his eyes never leaving her face. "What's your name?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "Aria." "Aria," he repeated, as if testing the weight of it. "No family name?" "Not anymore." Her voice was bitter. "They took it when they threw me out. The Ashwood clan." Her head snapped up. "How did you?" "I know every pack in my territory," Zane said, his tone flat. "And I know which ones deal in the slave trade." His eyes darkened. "Your alpha will answer for that." Aria's breath caught. "You're going to punish him?" "I'm going to end him." The certainty in his voice sent a chill down her spine. He wasn't exaggerating. He wasn't posturing. He meant every word. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care?" Zane's gaze softened, just barely. "Because you're mine now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy and absolute. "And I protect what's mine." The carriage rolled through the darkened streets of the capital, wheels clattering against ancient stone. Aria pressed herself against the corner of her seat, as far from Zane as the confined space would allow. His words still echoed in her mind, impossible and terrifying in equal measure. "You're mine now." She'd belonged to no one her entire life. Her pack had made sure of that. And now this stranger, this king, claimed ownership of her with the same casual certainty someone might claim a misplaced glove. "Where are you taking me?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "The Blackthorn estate." Zane's eyes remained fixed on her, unblinking. "My home." "And then what?" "Then you'll be safe." "Safe from what?" His jaw tightened. "Everything that made you stand on that platform tonight." Aria wanted to believe him. God, some desperate part of her wanted to believe that safety was possible, that someone actually cared whether she lived or died. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. "Not anymore." "I don't understand," she said, her fingers twisting in the torn fabric of her dress. "Why would you buy me?" "I'm nobody. I have no wolf, no rank, no." "I know what you don't have." Zane leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, bringing his face closer to hers. "What I want to know is what you do have." "Nothing," Aria whispered. "I have nothing." "You're wrong." The certainty in his voice made her look up, meeting those burning silver eyes again. That same pull she'd felt on the platform thrummed through her chest, stronger now in the confined space. It made no sense. She'd never felt anything like it before. "When I walked into that hall," Zane said slowly, as if choosing each word with care, "I felt you. Before I saw you, before I knew where you were, I felt you. Like a beacon in the dark." Aria's breath caught. "That's impossible." "And yet?" He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin flush. "Tell me something, Aria. Have you ever felt like something was missing? Like there was a piece of yourself you couldn't quite reach?" She had. Her entire life, she'd felt incomplete. Hollow. Like everyone else had been given something essential at birth that had somehow skipped over her. But she'd always assumed it was just the absence of her wolf, the defect that made her worthless in the eyes of every pack. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered. Before Zane could respond, the carriage lurched to a sudden stop. His head snapped toward the window, his entire body going rigid. "We're not at the estate yet." The door flew open. A man stood in the opening, tall and lean with copper hair and a smile that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. He wore the formal attire of nobility, a deep burgundy coat with silver buttons, but something about him made Aria's skin crawl. "Your Majesty," the man said, his voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. What an unexpected pleasure. Zane's expression went absolutely glacial. "Jareth." You're blocking my carriage. Am I? Jareth's gaze slid past Zane and landed on Aria. His smile widened. So the rumors are true. The great Alpha King actually attended the Moonfall Auction. And made a purchase, no less. Move. Now. I'm simply curious. Jareth leaned against the doorframe with calculated casualness. What could possibly interest you about a wolfless Omega? Surely not her conversation skills. Aria shrank back instinctively. She knew men like this, men who used charm like a weapon, who smiled while they destroyed you. Zane moved with supernatural speed. One moment he was seated, the next he had Jareth by the throat, pinned against the outside of the carriage. The guards who'd been flanking them didn't move, they knew better than to interfere. You will speak of her with respect, Zane growled, his voice dropping into something inhuman. Or you will not speak at all. Jareth's face had gone red, but he managed to choke out a laugh. Protective already? How fascinating. Zane released him with a sharp shove. Jareth stumbled back, rubbing his throat, but that unsettling smile never wavered. A word of advice, Your Majesty, Jareth said, straightening his coat. The council is already questioning your judgment. Bringing a wolfless Omega into the royal household will only fuel their doubts. His eyes flicked to Aria again. Some might even see it as weakness. Let them try. The threat in those 3 words was unmistakable. Jareth's smile finally faltered, just slightly. As you wish. He bowed, the gesture mocking. I look forward to seeing how this plays out. He disappeared into the shadows between buildings. Zane climbed back into the carriage and shut the door with more force than necessary. Move, he barked at the driver. The carriage lurched forward again. Aria's hands were shaking. Who is that? Jareth Corvain, head of the Council of Elders. Zane's voice was tight with barely contained rage. And a viper who's been looking for an excuse to challenge my rule for the last 5 years. Because of me? Horror crept into her voice. Because you chose me? No, Zane turned to her, and something in his expression softened. Because he's afraid of what you might become. That doesn't make any sense. I'm nothing. Stop saying that. The command was sharp. You keep calling yourself nothing, worthless, broken. Who taught you to speak about yourself that way? Aria flinched. Everyone. Then everyone was wrong. The words hit her like a physical blow. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever suggested that maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't with her. Before she could respond, the carriage passed through massive iron gates. Aria looked out the window and gasped. The Blackthorn estate rose before them like something out of a dream. A sprawling stone mansion with towers that pierced the night sky, surrounded by gardens that seemed to glow silver in the moonlight. It was beautiful and intimidating in equal measure, a fortress and a palace combined. We're here, Zane said quietly. The carriage stopped in front of broad marble steps. Zane exited first, then extended his hand to help her down. Aria stared at that offered hand for a long moment. This was her last chance to refuse, to demand he take her back, to choose the familiar misery of the auction house over the unknown terror of whatever awaited her here. But that wasn't really a choice at all. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady, and he helped her down from the carriage. The moment her bare feet touched the marble steps, something strange happened. A ripple of energy pulsed through the ground, racing up through her legs and into her chest. The garden seemed to shimmer, the air itself humming with power. Zane felt it too. She saw his eyes widen, saw him grip her hand tighter. What was that? She breathed. Before he could answer, an elderly woman appeared at the top of the steps. She wore simple gray robes, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, but her eyes held the weight of centuries. Your Majesty, she said, her voice like whined through ancient trees. You've brought her. Elder Mara. Zane's tone held a note of respect he'd shown no one else. We need to talk. The old woman's gaze locked onto Aria, and her weathered face went pale. By the moon goddess, she whispered. It can't be. What? Aria looked between them, panic rising. What can't be? Elder Mara descended the steps slowly, her eyes never leaving Aria's face. When she reached them, she lifted one trembling hand and touched Aria's cheek, right over the bruise. And Aria's world exploded. Visions slammed into her mind. A woman with her face standing in a circle of ancient stones. Wolves bowing before her. A crown of silver fire. Power raw and devastating, pouring from her hands like light. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. Aria stumbled back, gasping. Zane caught her before she could fall. Elder Mara's expression had shifted from shock to something that looked almost like fear. She's not just any Omega, Your Majesty. I know. Do you? The old woman's voice shook. Do you understand what you've done by bringing her here? The council will come for her. The rival packs will come for her. And if she awakens, she will awaken, Zane said firmly. And when she does, let them come. Aria found her voice. Will someone please tell me what's happening? Elder Mara and Zane exchanged a long look. Finally, the old woman spoke. Child, you are not wolfless because you are broken. You are wolfless because what sleeps inside you is so powerful that it has been dormant your entire life, waiting. Waiting for what? Zane's hand tightened on her shoulder. For me. Aria couldn't breathe. The words hung in the air like a death sentence and a promise all at once. What sleeps inside you? As if something lived beneath her skin, coiled and waiting, something everyone else could sense but her. Something that terrified a woman who looked like she'd witnessed the birth of mountains. I don't understand, Aria whispered, her voice breaking. I've been tested. Every year since I was 12. There's nothing inside me. No wolf. No. The tests measure what's already awakened. Elder Mara interrupted gently. They cannot detect what's been sealed. Sealed? The word tasted foreign on Aria's tongue. By who? Why? That, the old woman said carefully, is what we need to discover. Zane's jaw clenched. Inside. Now. We're too exposed out here. He was right. Aria could feel eyes watching them from the shadows of the estate, from windows and doorways. Servants, perhaps. Or guards. Or something worse. Everyone wanted to see the wolfless Omega the Alpha King had dragged home like a prize. Zane guided her up the marble steps, his hand never leaving the small of her back. The touch was possessive but not cruel, protective in a way that made something in her chest ache. She'd never been protected before. Never been worth protecting. The interior of the Blackthorn estate was even more breathtaking than the exterior. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, held up by carved stone columns. Tapestries depicting ancient battles hung from the walls, and moonlight streamed through massive windows, casting everything in silver. It was beautiful and cold, a place built for power, not comfort. Elder Mara led them through winding corridors to a private study. The moment the heavy oak door closed behind them, Aria felt like she could breathe again. Slightly. Sit, Zane commanded, gesturing to a leather chair by the fireplace. Aria sat, grateful her legs had carried her this far. They felt like water. Zane moved to a cabinet and poured 3 glasses of amber liquid. He handed one to Elder Mara, then offered one to Aria. She took it with trembling hands. Drink, he said. It'll help. She obeyed, and the liquid burned down her throat like fire. She gasped, her eyes watering, but he was right, the shock of it grounded her, pulled her back from the edge of panic. Zane lowered himself into the chair across from her, his silver eyes never leaving her face. Tell me about your childhood. Before the Ashwood clan rejected you. There's nothing to tell, Aria said quietly. I was born into the pack. My parents died when I was young, a rogue attack. I was raised by the pack caretakers. When I didn't shift at 13 like everyone else, they started the tests. When I didn't shift at 14, 15, 16, they gave up. Called me defective. By 18, I was doing servant work. By 20, they'd stopped using my name. She stared into her glass. By 22, they sold me. Did anything strange ever happen to you? Elder Mara asked, leaning forward. Moments where you felt power you couldn't explain? Times when things moved without you touching them? Dreams that felt too real? Aria opened her mouth to say no. But the words stuck. Because there had been moments. When I was 16, she said slowly, there was a fire. In the servant quarters. It spread so fast, everyone was screaming, trapped. I remember being terrified, feeling like my chest was going to explode, and then, she frowned, the memory hazy. The flames just stopped. Froze in place for a few seconds. Long enough for everyone to escape. Zane and Elder Mara exchanged glances. They said it was a draft, Aria continued. A wind from the mountains. But there was no wind that night. What else? Zane's voice was tight. Sometimes, when people were cruel to me, when they'd hit me or, she swallowed hard. Sometimes they'd stumble. Fall. Like something had tripped them. I always thought it was coincidence. It wasn't, Elder Mara said firmly. Your power was trying to protect you. But whatever seal was placed on you kept it contained. Mostly. Why would anyone seal my power? Aria demanded, frustration bleeding into her voice. What possible reason? To hide you, Zane said quietly. From people who would kill you for what you are. The room fell silent. Aria's hands tightened around her glass. And what am I? Elder Mara stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the moonlit gardens. There is a bloodline, she said softly, older than the packs, older than the territories. A bloodline that existed when wolves and magic were one and the same. They were called the Moonborn wolves who didn't just shift, but who could command the very essence of our kind. They could force submission from any wolf, heal mortal wounds, even manipulate the bond between mates. Aria's blood ran cold. That's impossible. The Moonborn are a myth. All myths start somewhere. Elder Mara turned to face her. The last known Moonborn was hunted down and killed 300 years ago. Her name was Lyra Silvercrest. She was pregnant when she died. But if she died, her child survived, Zane interrupted. Hidden by loyal followers. Raised in secret. And that child had children, and they had children, and the bloodline continued. But each generation, the power grew weaker. Diluted. Until most believed it had vanished entirely. Aria's heart pounded. You think I'm descended from this Moonborn line? I don't think, Zane said, his voice rough. I know. The moment I walked into that auction hall, my beast recognized you. Not as pack. Not as prey. As mate. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. And the only thing powerful enough to be mated to an alpha king is another source of primal power. The glass slipped from Aria's fingers and shattered on the floor. Mate. He'd said mate. No, she breathed. That's not possible. Mates are chosen by the moon goddess. There are signs, the pull, the scent, You felt it, Zane said, standing and moving toward her. On the platform. In the carriage. Just now when you touched the ground outside. Don't lie to me, Aria. Don't lie to yourself. She had felt it. That inexplicable pull, like gravity, had shifted, and he'd become her center. But mates were supposed to be beautiful, fated things. Not this, not a king and a broken Omega who couldn't even shift. I can't be your mate, Aria whispered. I'm nobody. If you call yourself nothing one more time, Zane growled, I will prove to you exactly how far from nothing you are. The threat shouldn't have made her shiver. But it did. A sharp knock on the door shattered the tension. Your Majesty, a male voice called. The council has arrived. They demand an audience. Zane's expression darkened. Already? Jareth works fast. Let them wait, Elder Mara said sharply. No, Zane straightened, his entire demeanor shifting from mate to monarch in seconds. If I refuse them, they'll claim I'm hiding something. Which I am. But they don't need to know that yet. He looked at Aria. You'll stay here. Don't leave this room. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Elder Mara. What are you going to tell them? Aria asked. The truth. Part of it, anyway. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. That I've claimed an Omega as mine. That she's under my protection. And that anyone who touches her forfeits their life. He strode toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. This isn't over, Aria. Whatever was done to you, whoever sealed your power, will find answers. And we'll make them pay. Then he was gone. Elder Mara moved to sit beside Aria, her weathered hand covering the younger woman's trembling one. You're safe here, child. Am I? Aria's voice was hollow. Zane said the council will come for me. The rival packs. If I'm really what you think I am, if there's even a chance, then you're the most valuable and dangerous creature in this kingdom, Elder Mara finished bluntly. Some will want to control you. Others will want to kill you. And still others, she hesitated. Others will want to use you to overthrow the Alpha King. Aria's stomach churned. Then he should let me go. Send me away before I become a liability. He can't. Elder Mara's eyes were sad. The mate bond doesn't work that way. Now that he's found you, now that his beast has recognized you, he would burn this kingdom to ash before he let you go. But I haven't recognized him, Aria protested weakly. I don't feel what he feels. Don't you? The question hung in the air. And Aria couldn't answer it. Because deep down, in a place she didn't want to examine too closely, she knew the old woman was right. Something had shifted inside her the moment Zane's shadow had fallen across her on that platform. Something that felt inevitable and terrifying. Like fate had finally found her. And fate, she was learning, had teeth. Aria stood frozen in the study, listening to the muffled sounds of voices echoing through the corridors. Deep, authoritative voices that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The council. Here to question the Alpha King about the worthless Omega he'd brought home. Elder Mara had left 10 minutes ago, muttering something about preparing protective wards. Which meant Aria was alone. She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cool glass. The gardens below were beautiful silver flowers that seemed to glow in the moonlight, pathways lined with ancient stones. Peaceful. Safe. A prison dressed in beauty. You shouldn't stand so close to the window. Aria spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. A woman stood in the doorway, tall and elegant, with long auburn hair and eyes like emeralds. She wore a deep green gown that hugged her curves, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone who'd been born into power. But it was her scent that hit Aria first, wild roses and lightning. Pure, dominant alpha energy. Who are you? Aria demanded, taking a step back. The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Charlotte. Beta to the Alpha King. Second in command of the Blackthorn Pack. She closed the door behind her with a soft click. And you must be the little mystery Zane dragged home from the auction. The way she said little mystery made it sound like an insult. He told me not to open the door for anyone, Aria said, her voice steadier than she felt. Good thing I have a key. Charlotte held up a silver key between two fingers, then tucked it back into her bodice. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to understand what the hell is going on. I don't know what you mean. Don't play stupid. It doesn't suit you. Charlotte crossed the room and poured herself a drink from Zane's cabinet, downing it in one smooth motion. Zane has never, and I mean never, shown interest in an Omega. Not for politics, not for pleasure, not for anything. He's had offers from every powerful pack in the kingdom. Alliances, treaties, beautiful she-wolves practically throwing themselves at his feet. She turned to face Aria. And he's turned down every single one. So forgive me if I'm a little confused why he suddenly decided to buy a wolfless nobody from a slave auction. Each word was a calculated strike, designed to wound. And it worked. Aria felt herself shrinking, that familiar shame crawling up her spine. I didn't ask him to choose me, Aria said quietly. No? Charlotte tilted her head. Then what did you do? Slip him something? Use some kind of charm or spell? Because trust me, sweetheart, there's no universe where the Alpha King chooses you over you. The words slipped out before Aria could stop them. But the flash of rage in Charlotte's eyes told her she'd guessed correctly. "Careful," Charlotte said, her voice dropping to something dangerous. "You might be under Zane's protection now, but that protection has limits. Accidents happen all the time in a place like this, especially to fragile little things who don't know their place." Aria's hands curled into fists. She was so tired of being threatened. So tired of being called worthless and fragile and nothing. "If you're going to threaten me, at least be honest about why. You're angry because you wanted him, and he never wanted you back." Charlotte moved with supernatural speed. One moment she was across the room, the next she had Aria pinned against the wall, her hand around Aria's throat. Not squeezing, not yet, but the promise was there. "Listen to me very carefully," Charlotte hissed. "I have spent 10 years fighting beside Zane, bleeding for him, building this kingdom with him. I have earned my place at his side. You're a temporary distraction, a curiosity. And the moment he realizes you're just another broken Omega with nothing to offer, he'll discard you like yesterday's trash." Aria's chest burned. Not from lack of air, Charlotte's grip was loose enough, but from something else. Something hot and furious building inside her, demanding to be released. "Get off me." The command came out in a voice that wasn't entirely hers. Deeper, older, resonant with power. And Charlotte obeyed. The beta stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock, her hand dropping from Aria's throat as if she'd been burned. She stared at Aria like she was seeing a ghost. "What?" Charlotte's voice shook. "What are you?" Aria was shaking too, staring at her own hands. They were glowing. Faint, silvery light emanated from her palms, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. I didn't mean to." The door slammed open. Zane stood in the doorway, his eyes blazing with fury. He took in the scene instantly, Charlotte backing away, Aria against the wall with glowing hands, the lingering scent of aggression in the air. "Out." His voice was lethal. "Now, Charlotte." "Your Majesty, I was just." "Out." Charlotte's face went pale. She'd never heard that tone from him before. None of them had. She bowed her head and fled, but not before shooting Aria one last look, half fear, half hatred. The door closed. Zane crossed the room in 3 strides and gripped Aria's glowing hands in his own. The moment their skin touched, the light flared brighter, then slowly faded. But Aria could still feel it humming beneath her skin, begging to be released again. "What did she do to you?" Zane demanded, his eyes scanning her for injuries. "She threatened me. Put her hand on my throat. I wanted her to stop, and then..." Aria looked up at him, tears burning her eyes. "What's happening to me?" "Your power is waking up." Zane's voice was gentler now. "Faster than we anticipated. The seal is breaking. Because of you? Because of us." He lifted one of her hands, pressing her palm against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, strong, steady, grounding. The mate bond accelerates everything. Your wolf recognizes mine, even if you don't understand it yet. And your power, he hesitated. Your power recognizes that you're finally safe enough to emerge. "I'm not safe," Aria whispered. "Your beta wants me dead. The council is here because of me. And whatever I am, whatever this thing inside me is. Listen to me." Zane's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I know you're scared. I know this is overwhelming. But you are not alone anymore. Do you understand? Whatever comes, whatever happens, I will stand between you and anyone who tries to hurt you." "Why?" The question tore out of her. "Why do you care? You don't even know me. My beast knows you." His thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "It knows your scent, your soul, the shape of your heart. And that's enough for me." Aria's breath caught. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted it so badly it hurt. But before she could respond, Elder Mara burst through the door, her face ashen. "Your Majesty," she gasped. "We have a problem. The council just received a letter." From the High Oracle. Zane's entire body went rigid. What does it say? Elder Mara's hands shook as she unfolded the parchment. When she read it aloud, her voice was barely a whisper. The moonborn heir walks among you. She who is lost is now found. She will either unite the packs under a new dawn or burn the kingdom to ash. The Alpha King must choose, bind her with blood and crown, or kill her before the next full moon. There is no third path. Silence crashed through the room like thunder. Aria felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Bind her with blood and crown. What does that mean? Elder Mara looked at Zane, then back at Aria. It means a blood bond. A ritual that would tie your life force to his permanently. You would share power, share strength, share everything. It's the most intimate magic two wolves can perform. She paused. It's also irreversible. Once bound, you cannot be separated without killing you both. And the alternative is killing me, Aria said flatly. The council will demand it, Zane said, his voice hard. They'll say you're too dangerous to live. That the risk isn't worth. Maybe they're right. Both Zane and Elder Mara stared at her. Aria pulled away from Zane's touch, wrapping her arms around herself. Maybe I am too dangerous. I can't control this power. I don't even understand it. What if they're right? What if I destroy everything? You won't. Zane's certainty was absolute. How do you know? Because I've seen true monsters, Aria. I've stood on battlefields soaked in blood. I've watched wolves tear each other apart for power. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming. And you? You're not a monster. You're just a girl who's been hurt too many times to believe she deserves good things. The words hit her like a physical blow. The council is waiting for my answer, Zane continued. They want to know what I intend to do with you. So I'll ask you, Aria. His silver eyes burned into hers. What do you want? Do you want me to perform the blood bond? To tie your fate to mine? Or do you want me to help you run, to hide you somewhere they'll never find you? Those aren't the only options, Aria protested. You could. There is no third path, Zane quoted the oracle. You heard her. This is the choice. Aria's mind raced. A blood bond would mean permanently linking herself to this man, this stranger who claimed to be her mate. It meant accepting a destiny she didn't understand, stepping into power that terrified her. But running meant a life of fear, of hiding, of always looking over her shoulder, waiting for the moment someone discovered what she was. And death meant this all ended. The fear, the pain, the crushing weight of being unwanted. If I agree to the bond, Aria said slowly, what happens to me? Do I become your possession? Your weapon? You become my equal. Zane's voice was fierce. My partner. My queen. The word hung in the air between them. Queen. A wolfless Omega becoming queen of the most powerful pack in the realm. It was insane. Impossible. And yet, I need time, Aria whispered. I need to think. You have until tomorrow night. Elder Mara's voice was grave. The full moon rises then. If the bond isn't completed by moonrise, the council will vote. And I don't think I need to tell you how that vote will go. 24 hours. 24 hours to decide if she wanted to live or die. If she wanted to become something more than she'd ever dreamed, or disappear into nothing. Zane reached for her hand again, but Aria pulled away. Please, she said quietly. I need to be alone. For a long moment, she thought he might refuse. But finally, he nodded. I'll be right outside. If you need anything. I know. He left, Elder Mara following behind him. And Aria sank to the floor, her back against the wall, her glowing hands pressed to her chest. Tomorrow night, she would have to choose. Life or death. Destiny or oblivion. Everything or nothing at all. Aria didn't sleep. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the oracle's words burning behind her eyelids. Unite the packs or burn the kingdom to ash. As if she had any control over which path her life would take. As if destiny cared what a broken Omega wanted. She spent the night pacing the study, watching the moon arc across the sky through the window. Her hands had stopped glowing hours ago, but she could still feel the power beneath her skin, restless, hungry, waiting. Waiting for what? For her to accept it? Or for her to die trying to deny it? When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, Aria made a decision. She would ask to see the ritual, to understand exactly what the blood bond entailed before she committed her entire existence to it. She deserved that much, at least. To know what she was choosing. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Elder Mara or perhaps Zane. Instead, a young woman entered carrying a tray of food. She had soft brown hair and warm hazel eyes, and she smiled shyly at Aria. "Good morning, miss. I'm Lily. I've been assigned as your attendant." She set the tray on the desk. "His Majesty thought you might be hungry." Aria's stomach growled in response, betraying her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. The auction felt like a lifetime ago. "Thank you," Aria said quietly, moving to the desk. The food was simple but elegant: fresh bread, cheese, fruit, and some kind of meat pie that smelled heavenly. Lily lingered by the door, fidgeting with her apron. "Miss, if you don't mind me saying, the whole estate is talking about you." Aria's hand paused halfway to the bread. "Talking about what?" "About how you stood up to Beta Charlotte." Lily's eyes were wide with something that looked almost like awe. "Nobody's ever done that before. She's terrifying. But they say you glowed like moonlight and commanded her like an alpha." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Some of the servants think you're the Moonborn from the old stories." "I'm not," Aria said quickly. Too quickly. "But you're something special." Lily's smile was genuine. "His Majesty has never looked at anyone the way he looks at you. Like you're the sun and he's been living in darkness." Aria's chest tightened. "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." "I could." "You gave me a kind word when I brought you food," Lily interrupted gently. "Beta Charlotte would have dismissed me without a glance. Most of the nobility treat servants like furniture. But you," she hesitated. "You looked at me like I was a person. That tells me everything I need to know." Before Aria could respond, voices erupted in the hallway outside, angry, raised voices that made Lily's face go pale. "They're not supposed to be here," the girl whispered. "The council session doesn't start for another hour." The door burst open. Jareth Corvain stood in the entrance, flanked by two other council members Aria didn't recognize. His copper hair was perfectly styled, his burgundy coat immaculate, but his cold blue eyes held nothing but contempt. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with false pleasantry. "Here she is. The little Omega who's caused so much trouble." Lily immediately dropped into a low bow and scurried from the room. Aria stood slowly, her hands clenched at her sides. "I was told I was under the Alpha King's protection. That means you have no right to be here." "The Alpha King," Jareth said, stepping inside, "is currently occupied with matters of state." "Which gives us a perfect opportunity to chat." The other two council members moved to block the door. One was an older man with gray hair and hard eyes. The other was a woman with silver streaks in her black hair and a cruel smile. "What do you want?" Aria demanded, hating how her voice shook. "Answers." Jareth circled her like a predator. "You see, we've been doing some research. Asking questions. And we've discovered some very interesting things about you, Aria of no family name. I have nothing to hide. Don't you?" The older man spoke now, his voice gravelly. "Tell us, girl. How does a wolfless Omega command an Alpha to obey? How does she make her hands glow with power that hasn't been seen in 3 centuries? "I don't know," Aria said honestly. "I didn't even know I could until the Alpha King awakened it in you." Jareth's smile was razor-sharp. "How convenient. He claims you as his mate, and suddenly you're special. Powerful. Worthy of a crown." He leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear. "Or perhaps you were always special, and you've been hiding it. Waiting for the perfect moment to ensnare the most powerful wolf in the kingdom." Aria jerked back. "That's insane. I was being sold at an auction. I had no control over. Perhaps that was the plan all along, the woman interjected. Make yourself look weak. Helpless. Appeal to his protective instincts. And once you have his trust, she drew a finger across her throat. I would never hurt him, Aria said, her voice fierce. I don't even know him, but I would never. We have a proposal, Jareth interrupted smoothly. One that benefits everyone. You leave. Tonight. Before the full moon rises. We'll provide you with gold, safe passage to the Southern Territories, and a new identity. You can start over. Live a quiet life. And in return, you walk away from the Alpha King and never return. Aria stared at him. You want me to run? We want you to survive, the older man said. The blood bond ritual is dangerous. Ancient magic that hasn't been performed in generations. There's a reason for that. The last time it was attempted, both parties died screaming. Their life forces tore each other apart. Ice flooded Aria's veins. What? Oh, didn't Elder Mara mention that part? Jareth's smile widened. The blood bond only works if both parties are truly compatible. If there's even the slightest mismatch in power or intent, he shrugged. Well, it's not a pleasant death. You're lying, Aria whispered. But doubt crept into her voice. Am I? Jareth pulled a leather-bound book from his coat and tossed it onto the desk. Read it yourself. Page 47. The account of Alpha Marcus and his supposed mate, Elena. They attempted the blood bond in 1847. They lasted 3 minutes before their bodies started tearing themselves apart from the inside. Aria's hands shook as she opened the book. The pages were yellowed with age, the writing in an old dialect she could barely read. But the illustrations were clear enough, 2 figures writhing in agony, their bodies glowing with unnatural light, blood pouring from their eyes and mouths. Still want to risk it? The woman asked softly. Still want to gamble both your life and the Alpha King's on the hope that you're truly mates? Aria's mind raced. Why hadn't Elder Mara told her this? Why hadn't Zane warned her about the danger? Unless they didn't know. Or unless they knew and didn't care. Take our offer, Jareth pressed. Leave tonight. Live. Let the Alpha King find a proper mate, someone who won't kill him. And if I refuse? Then we'll be forced to vote for your execution. The older man's voice held no sympathy. For the safety of the kingdom, you understand. We cannot allow a potential threat to remain so close to the throne. Especially one who might destroy our king in the name of love, the woman added. Aria's chest felt like it was caving in. Every option was a trap. Stay and risk killing Zane in the ritual. Run and lose whatever chance she had of belonging somewhere. Refuse both and face execution. I need to speak with Zane, she managed. I'm afraid that's not possible, Jareth said. He's been called to the northern border. Reports of rogue attacks. He won't return until tonight, mere hours before the full moon rises. How convenient, Aria said bitterly. Actually, it is. Jareth's mask of civility finally dropped. It gives you time to make the right choice without his influence clouding your judgment. He moved toward the door, then paused. We'll return at sunset for your answer. Choose wisely, Aria. Your life depends on it. They left. Aria sank into the chair, her entire body shaking. The book lay open on the desk, those terrible illustrations staring up at her. She wanted to believe Jareth was lying, manipulating her. But the book looked genuine. The fear in those drawn faces looked real. What if she really did kill Zane? What if her power was incompatible with his? What if she destroyed the one person who'd ever chosen her? A sound at the window made her look up. A crow sat on the sill, its black eyes fixed on her. But there was something wrong about it, something too intelligent in its gaze. The crow tapped its beak against the glass 3 times. Then it spoke. He's in danger. The voice was raspy but undeniably human. They've led him into a trap. Rogues at the northern border, but not just rogues. Assassins. Hired by the council to ensure he doesn't return before moonrise. Aria shot to her feet. What? Who are you? A friend. The crow tilted its head. Or an enemy. Depends on what you do next. But know this, if the Alpha King dies tonight, so does your chance at the blood bond. So does your only protection. The council will execute you at dawn. Why are you telling me this? Because chaos is coming, little Moonborn. And I want to see which side you choose. The crow's eyes gleamed. Will you run and save yourself? Or will you run toward the danger to save him? I don't have a wolf, Aria said desperately. I can't fight. I can't even shift. How am I supposed to? You have something far more powerful than a wolf. The crow spread its wings. You have the same blood that once brought kingdoms to their knees. The question is, are you brave enough to use it? The crow launched itself from the window and disappeared into the morning sky. Aria stood frozen, her mind spinning. Zane was in danger. The council had orchestrated it. And she had a choice, let him die and take their offer to run, or somehow find the courage to save the man who'd saved her. Even if it meant unleashing power she didn't understand. Even if it meant dying in the attempt. She looked down at her hands. They weren't glowing now, but she could feel the potential thrumming beneath her skin. Waiting. Hungry. Are you brave enough? Aria thought of Zane's eyes when he'd looked at her on the auction platform. The certainty in his voice when he'd said that one. The way he'd held her face and promised to stand between her and danger. He'd chosen her when no one else ever had. Now it was her turn to choose him. Aria grabbed a cloak from the chair and wrapped it around her shoulders. She had no weapon, no plan, no idea how to get to the northern border. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't running away anymore. Aria ran. Not away from danger this time, but directly toward it. Her bare feet flew across the marble floors of the estate, the stolen cloak billowing behind her. She had no plan beyond get to Zane. No strategy beyond don't let him die. She burst through a side door and into the gardens, the morning air cold against her skin. Somewhere behind her, she heard shouts, guards discovering her absence, perhaps. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The northern border was miles away. Too far to run on foot. She needed a horse, a carriage, something. Where do you think you're going? Aria skidded to a halt. Charlotte stood in the center of the garden path, arms crossed, her auburn hair gleaming in the dawn light. Behind her stood 3 other wolves in fighting leathers, Charlotte's personal guard, by the look of them. Move, Aria said, her voice harder than she'd ever heard it. Please. I don't have time for this. Time for what? Charlotte's eyes narrowed. Time to run like the coward you are? I knew it. I told Zane you'd bolt the moment things got difficult. I'm not running away, Aria snapped. I'm running to him. He's in danger. The council. The council is dealing with rogue attacks, Charlotte interrupted. Zane can handle himself. He doesn't need a wolfless Omega playing hero. They're not rogues. Aria's hands clenched into fists. It's a trap. Assassins hired by Jareth to kill him before moonrise. If he dies, I become Alpha. Charlotte's voice was cold. So maybe you should ask yourself why I'd help you save him. The words were a slap. Aria stared at the woman who'd stood at Zane's side for 10 years, who claimed to care about him, and saw only ambition. Only hunger for power. You don't love him, Aria whispered. You never did. You just wanted his throne. Charlotte's face twisted with rage. Love? You think love matters in our world? I've bled for this pack. I've killed for it. I've earned my place at the top. And you're just some broken little girl who got lucky at an auction. She took a step forward. I'm not letting you leave this garden. Then you'll have to stop me. The power surged up inside Aria without warning, hot and wild and desperate. Her hands erupted with silver light, brighter than before, so bright that Charlotte and her guards had to shield their eyes. Stand aside, Aria commanded, and her voice echoed with that same ancient resonance that had made Charlotte obey before. Or I will make you stand aside. For a heartbeat, Charlotte wavered. Aria could see the internal struggle, the alpha instinct to fight warring with something deeper, something primal that recognized the authority in Aria's voice. Then Charlotte's eyes flashed gold, and she shifted. The transformation was instant and brutal. One moment a woman stood there, the next, a massive auburn wolf with fangs like knives. Her guards shifted too, forming a wall of fur and teeth. They lunged. Aria threw her hands up instinctively, and the power exploded outward. A shockwave of silver light burst from her palms, slamming into the wolves mid-leap and sending them flying backward. They hit the ground hard, whimpering, their bodies stunned but not seriously injured. Charlotte struggled to her feet, snarling, but Aria was already running past her. She didn't know where the stables were, didn't know which direction to go. But something inside her, some instinct that had nothing to do with logic, pulled her north. This way, it whispered. Hurry. Aria followed that pull, racing through gardens and courtyards, her lungs burning. She could hear Charlotte and the guards recovering behind her, but the distance was growing. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a figure in gray robes. Elder Mara caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. Child, what are you? Zane's in danger, Aria gasped. Trap at the northern border. Assassins. I have to. I know. Elder Mara's eyes were grave. I felt the disturbance in the wards. The council has been planning this. She pressed something into Aria's hand, a small stone that pulsed with warmth. This will guide you to him. Follow the heat. When it burns, you're close. Why are you helping me? Because I've seen what you can become. Elder Mara's weathered hand cupped Aria's cheek. And because I saw what happened to the last Mooborn who let fear control her power. She died alone, hunted, afraid to be what she was meant to be. Her eyes glistened. Don't make her mistake, child. Don't die wondering what you could have been. Aria's throat tightened. I don't know how to control it. I don't know what I'm doing. Good. Elder Mara smiled, sad and knowing. The ones who think they know everything are the ones who fail. Trust your instincts. Trust your heart. And trust that the mate bond will guide you to him. She turned Aria toward a path that led to the estate's outer gates. The stables are that way. Take Shadowmere, she's the black mare in the last stall. She's fast enough to get you there before it's too late. Thank you, Aria whispered. Don't thank me yet. Elder Mara's expression hardened. If you fail, if Zane dies, the council will execute you at dawn. And I won't be able to stop them. I know. And if you succeed, the old woman hesitated. Everything changes. The kingdom, the pacts, the balance of power, all of it shifts. Are you ready for that? Aria thought about the girl who'd stood on the auction platform yesterday, convinced her life was ending. That girl would have said no. Would have begged to remain invisible and forgotten. But that girl was gone. I have to be, Aria said. She ran. The black mare called Shadowmere was everything Elder Mara had promised, fast, powerful, and seemingly unafraid of the strange girl who climbed onto her back without saddle or bridle. Aria had never ridden a horse before, but the mare seemed to understand urgency. The moment Aria grabbed her mane, Shadowmere bolted through the gates and onto the northern road. The stone in Aria's hand grew warmer with every mile. The landscape blurred around her, forests and fields giving way to rocky terrain and steep hills. The sun climbed higher, marking the passage of hours. Aria's body screamed in protest, her legs aching from gripping the horse's sides, her hands raw from holding on. But she didn't slow down. Hold on, Zane, she thought desperately. Just hold on. The stones suddenly flared hot enough to burn. Shadowmere burst through a line of trees and into a clearing, and Aria's blood turned to ice. Bodies littered the ground, rogues, by the look of them, but also wolves in blackthorn colors. The earth was torn up from fighting, stained dark with blood. And in the center of it all, Zane. He was in wolf form, massive and black as midnight, surrounded by at least a dozen assassins. They weren't trying to fight him fairly. They were wearing him down, darting in to slash at his flanks, his legs, anywhere they could draw blood. He was already wounded. Aria could see the gashes in his fur, the way he favored his left front leg. And standing at the edge of the clearing, watching with cold satisfaction, was Jareth Corvain. Magnificent, isn't he? Jareth called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. The great Alpha King. But even legends bleed. Zane's head swung toward Jareth, and his snarl was pure murder. Don't worry, Jareth continued. Your death will be blamed on the rogues. A tragic loss. The kingdom will mourn, and the council will step in to maintain order. He smiled. It's really for the best. You were becoming unstable, making poor decisions, like choosing a wolfless Omega as your mate. One of the assassins lunged, and Zane met him with teeth and fury. The assassin's body hit the ground in 2 pieces. But there were too many. For every one Zane killed, 2 more closed in. He was slowing down, his movements less fluid, his breathing labored. Aria slid off Shadowmere, her legs barely holding her. The power inside her was screaming now, demanding release. But she'd never used it to fight before. Never tried to control it on purpose. Trust your instincts, Elder Mara had said. Aria closed her eyes and reached deep inside herself, past the fear and doubt, down to where that ancient power slept. And for the first time in her life, she didn't run from it. She embraced it. Enough. The word tore out of her with the force of a thunderclap, and power exploded from her body in a wave of pure silver light. It swept across the clearing like a tidal wave, slamming into the assassins and sending them flying. Some crashed into trees. Others tumbled across the ground, unconscious before they stopped rolling. Silence fell. Zane's wolf form turned toward her, his silver eyes wide with shock. Jareth's face had gone ashen. Impossible, he breathed. You're supposed to be powerless. Sealed. You can't. I can, Aria said, and her voice rang with authority that made even Jareth take a step back. She walked forward, her hands still glowing, her entire body thrumming with energy. And you're going to pay for what you tried to do. You won't kill me, Jareth said, but his voice shook. You don't have it in you. You're just a frightened little. Aria raised her hand, and Jareth's words cut off as an invisible force closed around his throat. Not choking him. Not yet. But the threat was clear. I'm not going to kill you, Aria said softly. Because I'm not a monster. But when Zane recovers, and he will recover, he's going to make you wish I had. She released him, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping. Aria ran to Zane. His wolf form was massive, easily twice the size of any normal wolf and covered in wounds. Blood matted his black fur. His breathing was shallow. Zane, she whispered, falling to her knees beside him. Hold on. Please. I'm here. I've got you. His silver eyes met hers, and something passed between them. Recognition. Gratitude. And something deeper, something that made her chest ache with an emotion she didn't have a name for. Then his eyes closed. No. Aria pressed her glowing hands against his side, against the worst of the wounds. No, you don't get to die. Not after I ran all this way. Not after. The power surged through her hands and into him. She felt it the moment their life forces connected, a rush of sensation, so intense it stole her breath. His pain became her pain. His heartbeat synchronized with hers. And the mate bond, which had been hovering between them like a possibility, suddenly snapped into place with the force of destiny. Mine, something deep in her soul whispered. Ours, another voice answered his voice, but not quite. His wolf speaking directly to whatever lived inside her. The wounds began to close. Slowly at first, then faster. The gashes sealing, the blood stopping. Zane's breathing steadied, deepened. And when his eyes opened again, they were glowing with the same silver light as her hands. Aria, he breathed, his wolf form shimmering and shifting back to human. He knelt before her, naked and covered in blood, but very much alive. You saved me. You saved me first, she whispered. His hands came up to cup her face, and the touch sent sparks of power dancing between them. The bond, he said hoarsely. I can feel it. Can you? She could. It was like a golden thread connecting her heart to his, pulsing with warmth and life, and something that felt terrifyingly close to love. The blood bond ritual, Aria said. We don't need it anymore, do we? This is permanent, Zane finished. The moment you healed me, the moment our powers merged, his thumb brushed across her cheek. We're bound now, Aria. Truly bound. Forever. I know. And somehow, impossibly, she wasn't afraid. She was home. It together. Understand? Aria nodded, squeezing his hand. Together. They walked through those massive doors side by side. The throne room was a cathedral of power, vaulted ceilings that seemed to touch the sky, columns carved from black stone, and windows that let in streams of afternoon light. The council sat in a semicircle of high-backed chairs, 13 faces ranging from ancient to middle-aged, all wearing expressions of cold judgment. Jareth stood at the center, a fresh bandage around his neck where Aria's power had gripped him. His smile was sharp as a blade. Your Majesty, he said, bowing just low enough to be respectful but not subservient. How fortunate that you survived the rogue attack. Though I must say your companion's interference was highly irregular. Irregular. Zane's voice was dangerously soft. She saved my life from the assassins you hired. A murmur rippled through the council. Several members shifted uncomfortably. A serious accusation, Jareth said smoothly. Do you have proof? I have your fear. Zane gestured to the bandage. And the mark her power left on your throat when you stood by and watched while killers tore into me. I was ensuring the safety of... You were ensuring my death. Zane's eyes flashed silver. And now you'll answer for it. Will I? Jareth's smile widened. He turned to address the full council. Esteemed members, I move that we address the more pressing matter at hand. Not the Alpha King's wild accusations, but the threat that stands beside him. His gaze locked onto Aria. This Omega has demonstrated uncontrolled power that violates every law we hold sacred. She attacked Beta Charlotte, a ranking member of this pack. She left the estate against direct orders. And she used forbidden magic, Moonborn magic, without sanction or training. The oldest council member, a woman with white hair and eyes like chips of ice, leaned forward. Is this true, girl? Did you attack the Beta? Aria's heart pounded, but she kept her voice level. I defended myself when Charlotte threatened me. And I left to save Zane's life when I learned the council had set a trap for him. Lies, Charlotte's voice rang out. She stepped from the shadows at the side of the room, her face bruised from where Aria's power had thrown her. She's unstable. Dangerous. She glows with unnatural light and commands alphas like slaves. Because she is Moonborn, Elder Mara's voice cut through the tension like a knife. The old woman emerged from behind one of the columns, her gray robes flowing. And you all know it. You've known since the Oracle's letter arrived. Silence crashed through the room. The Moonborn line was extinct. One council member protested weakly. Was it? Elder Mara moved to stand beside Aria. Or did we simply convince ourselves it was, because the alternative was too frightening to contemplate? She swept her gaze across the council. You all read the Oracle's message. She who is lost is now found. Did you think that meant nothing? It means she's a threat. Jareth's composure was cracking. The Oracle said she would either unite the packs or burn the kingdom to ash. Those aren't odds I'm willing to gamble on. Then you should have thought of that before you tried to murder your king, Zane said coldly. I tried to protect this kingdom from your weakness. Jareth's voice rose. You're so blinded by the mate bond that you can't see what she is, a weapon waiting to explode. The last Moonborn nearly destroyed everything. What makes you think she'll be any different? Because I choose to be different, Aria said, and her voice rang with power that made the windows rattle. Every eye turned to her. She stepped forward, away from Zane's protective presence, and faced the council alone. You're right. I have power I don't fully understand. Power that scared me so much I spent my whole life believing I was broken rather than face what I might be. She looked at each council member in turn. But I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. And I'm not letting fear, yours or mine, decide who I become. Her hands began to glow, soft silver light emanating from her palms. But this time, she didn't fight it. She let it build, let it flow through her veins like moonlight made liquid. The Moonborn were hunted because people feared what they couldn't control, Aria continued. Because power without a leash terrifies those who crave dominance. But I'm not interested in dominating anyone. She turned to Zane. I'm interested in standing beside someone who sees me as an equal. Who chose me when I had nothing. Who made me believe I could be more than what the world told me I was. The bond between them flared, visible now, a golden thread of light connecting their hearts. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The mate bond, someone whispered. It's already formed. Impossible, Jareth breathed. The blood ritual hasn't been performed. You can't have. We didn't need the ritual, Zane said, moving to stand beside Aria again. When she healed me, when our powers merged on the battlefield, the bond completed itself. He faced the council, his presence radiating absolute authority. Aria is my mate. My equal. And soon, she will be your queen. Never. Jareth's control shattered completely. I won't bow to a wolfless nobody who. She's not wolfless. The new voice made everyone freeze. A figure stepped from the shadows at the back of the throne room, the crow from before, but now in human form. A man with midnight black hair and eyes that gleamed with ancient knowledge. He moved with fluid grace, and power rolled off him in waves that made even the council members pale. Who are you? Zane demanded, positioning himself protectively in front of Aria. My name is Corvus, the man said. And I'm what you might call an interested observer. His eyes fixed on Aria. I've been watching you, little Moonborn. Waiting to see if you'd run or fight. If you'd embrace your power or let fear consume you. Why? Aria asked. Because 300 years ago, I made a promise to the last Moonborn, to Lyra Silvercrest. Corvus's expression softened. I promised that if her bloodline ever awakened again, I would ensure they had a choice. A real choice. Not the path of fear and persecution her ancestors walked, but something different. He raised his hand, and a sphere of dark energy formed in his palm. I am a shadow weaver, the opposite of Moonborn, you might say. Where your power brings light and healing and unity, mine brings darkness and secrets and necessary endings. He smiled. We were meant to balance each other. But when the Moonborn were hunted to extinction, that balance shattered. What does this have to do with Aria? Zane growled. Everything. Corvus turned to address the council. You want proof she won't destroy the kingdom? I'll give you proof. He gestured, and the sphere of shadow expanded, filling the air with images, memories pulled from darkness and made visible. The council watched in stunned silence as scenes played out before them. Aria as a child, using her power instinctively to save other servants from a collapsing roof. Aria as a teenager, unconsciously healing a dying wolf pup she'd found in the woods. Aria just yesterday, standing on the auction platform with her head held high despite everything they'd done to break her. Every time she could have used her power for revenge, for destruction, for selfish gain, Corvus said quietly, she chose compassion instead. Even when the world showed her nothing but cruelty, she remained kind. He dismissed the images with a wave. That is your proof. Not that she won't have the power to destroy, because she will. But that she has the heart not to. Jareth's face had gone ashen. This proves nothing. She's still dangerous. Still more worthy of leading than you've ever been, Charlotte's voice cut through. Everyone turned to stare at the beta. Charlotte stood rigid, her hands clenched at her sides, but when she spoke again, her voice was steady. I've hated her since the moment Zane chose her. I wanted her gone. Dead. But she swallowed hard. When she threw me aside in the garden, when her power could have killed me easily, she held back. She didn't want to hurt me. She just wanted to save him. Charlotte's eyes met Aria's. I would have killed her without hesitation. But she showed mercy to someone who showed her none. Charlotte, Aria began. I was wrong, Charlotte continued, her voice cracking. About you. About what you are. And I'm sorry. The apology hung in the air like something fragile and precious. Aria took a step toward her. You love him too, she said softly. I understand that. I do. And I'm not asking you to love me. Just give me a chance to prove I can stand beside him without destroying everything. Charlotte's jaw tightened, but she nodded once. Then she turned to the council. If we execute her, we lose not just the Moonborn, but the best chance this kingdom has had in centuries to heal the divisions between packs. We lose the balance Corvus spoke of. We lose everything. You would support her claim? The white-haired councilwoman asked, incredulous. I would support my alpha's choice, Charlotte said firmly. As should we all. Jareth laughed, a harsh, desperate sound. You're all fools. Blind, sentimental fools. She'll destroy us. Mark my words. Enough. Zane's voice was thunder. Jareth Corvain, I hereby charge you with treason. With conspiracy to commit murder. With hiring assassins to kill your king. His eyes blazed. And I sentence you to exile. You have until sunset to leave my territory. If you're found here after dark, the sentence becomes death. You can't. I can. And I have. Zane's gaze swept the council. Does anyone else wish to challenge my authority? To question my choice of mate? To suggest that the woman who saved my life when all of you sat idle is unworthy of standing at my side? Silence. One by one, the council members bowed their heads in submission. Even Charlotte dropped to one knee. All hail the Alpha King, the white-haired woman said, her voice carrying through the chamber. And his Moonborn queen. The words echoed. Repeated. Grew into a chant that filled the throne room with sound and power, and something that felt impossibly like hope. Aria felt tears streaming down her face. Yesterday, she'd been standing on an auction block, convinced her life was ending. Today, she was being crowned queen by the same people who'd wanted her dead. Zane took her hand and led her to the twin thrones at the front of the chamber. He sat in one, then gestured for her to take the other. Together, he said again. Together, she echoed. And when she sat beside him, when their hands joined and their powers merged into something greater than either could achieve alone, Aria finally understood what the oracle had meant. She wouldn't unite the packs through force or fear. She'd unite them through the same thing that had saved her. Choice, compassion, and the courage to believe broken things could be made whole. Part 9. Satisfying conclusion. 3 months later, the kingdom had transformed. Aria stood at the window of her private chambers, watching the sun set over the Blackthorn estate. The gardens below were filled with wolves from every pack in the territory, alphas, betas, and omegas mixing freely in a way that would have been unthinkable just seasons ago. They'd come for the official coronation ceremony, the one that would be witnessed by all the packs under the full moon tonight. You're nervous, Zane said from behind her. She didn't startle. The bond made it impossible to surprise each other anymore. She always knew when he was near, could feel his presence like warmth against her skin. A little, she admitted, turning to face him. He looked magnificent in his formal attire, black leather and silver threading, a crown of midnight metal resting on his dark hair. But it was his eyes that held her, those silver eyes that had seen her when she was nothing and chosen her anyway. You've addressed the council a dozen times since that day, Zane said, crossing the room to stand before her. You've negotiated treaties, settled disputes, and personally visited half the packs in the kingdom. Why is tonight different? Because tonight makes it permanent, Aria said softly. Tonight, I officially become queen. And everyone will be watching to see if I'm worthy. Zane's hands came up to cup her face, his thumbs brushing across her cheekbones. You've already proven you're worthy. Everything else is just ceremony. Easy for you to say. You were born to this. And you were born to stand beside me. His voice was fierce. Never doubt that, Aria. Not for a second. A knock at the door interrupted them. "Enter," Zane called. Elder Mara stepped inside, followed by 3 attendants carrying a dress that made Aria's breath catch. It was silver, the color of moonlight, with intricate embroidery that seemed to shimmer and move in the light. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "The coronation gown," Elder Mara said with a smile. "A gift from the Southern Pax. They wanted you to know they support your claim." Aria's throat tightened. 3 months ago, those same Pax had called for her execution. Now they were sending gifts and pledges of loyalty. "Thank you," she managed. Elder Mara's expression softened. "The kingdom is changing, child. Because you had the courage to change first." She gestured to the attendants. "Now come. We have work to do." A queen doesn't crown herself. An hour later, Aria stood before a mirror and barely recognized herself. The silver gown fit perfectly, hugging her curves before flowing out in elegant waves. Her dark hair had been styled in intricate braids woven with silver threads that caught the light. But it was her eyes that shocked her most. They glowed faintly with that inner power she'd learned to embrace, making her look ethereal and untouchable. "You look like the legends," Lily breathed. The young servant had become Aria's closest friend over the past months, one of the few people who treated her like a person instead of a symbol. "I look terrified," Aria corrected. "You look like a queen," Charlotte said from the doorway. Aria turned, surprised. The beta had kept her distance since that day in the throne room, maintaining a professional courtesy, but nothing more. Charlotte stepped inside, and Aria noticed she carried something, a small wooden box. "I wanted to give you this before the ceremony," she said, her voice uncertain. It belonged to Zane's mother, the last queen. She opened the box to reveal a delicate silver circlet, simpler than Zane's crown but no less beautiful. Moonstone gems were set along the band, catching the light like captured starlight. "Charlotte, I can't." "You can." Charlotte's voice was firm. "She would have wanted you to have it. She always said the next queen would need to be strong enough to stand beside Zane, not just follow behind him." Her lips curved in a sad smile. "I thought that would be me. But I was wrong. You're what he needs. What the kingdom needs." Aria crossed to her and took the box, her fingers brushing Charlotte's. "Thank you. For this. And for everything." "Don't make me regret it," Charlotte said, but there was warmth in her eyes now. "Be the queen we deserve, Aria. Be better than all of us." "I'll try." Charlotte nodded once, then left. Elder Mara stepped forward and lifted the circlet from the box. "Shall we?" Aria bowed her head, and the old woman placed the crown upon her hair. The moment the metal touched her skin, power surged through her, not painful, but overwhelming. She felt every wolf in the estate, felt their heartbeats like drums, felt the living pulse of the kingdom itself. "The crown recognizes you," Elder Mara whispered. "You are truly queen now." The coronation ceremony took place in the great courtyard, under the light of the full moon. Thousands of wolves had gathered, more than Aria had ever seen in one place. They filled every available space, spilling out into the gardens and streets beyond. Alphas stood shoulder to shoulder with Omegas. Ancient rivals shared ground peacefully. And at the center of it all, 2 thrones had been erected on a raised platform. Zane was already seated when Aria emerged from the estate. The crowd fell silent as she walked toward him, her silver gown trailing behind her, her circlet gleaming in the moonlight. She could feel their eyes on her, feel their judgment, their hope, their fear. But she kept her head high and her steps steady. When she reached the platform, Zane stood and extended his hand. She took it, and together they faced the crowd. 3 months ago, Zane's voice carried across the courtyard, amplified by the acoustics of the space. "I walked into an auction house and found something I didn't know I was searching for. Not just a mate. Not just power. But hope." He turned to Aria, his silver eyes burning into hers. This woman stood among the unwanted and the forgotten. She'd been told her entire life that she was worthless. Broken. Nothing. And yet when I needed her most, when assassins sought my death and the kingdom teetered on the edge of civil war, she didn't run. She didn't hide. She chose courage over fear. She chose me. His hand tightened on hers. Tonight, I ask you to make that same choice. To choose hope over hatred. Unity over division. To see in her what I see, not a threat to be eliminated, but a chance to become something greater than we've ever been. He released her hand and stepped back. Elder Mara moved forward, carrying a velvet cushion that held a second crown larger than Aria's circlet, more ornate, heavy with the weight of tradition and responsibility. Aria, the old woman said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard, do you swear to protect this kingdom and all its people? To lead with wisdom, rule with compassion, and stand as a shield between our wolves and any who would do them harm. Aria's voice was steady. I swear it. Do you swear to honor the bond between Alpha and Omega, to never abuse your power, and to remember that true strength lies not in domination but in service? I swear it. Then by the authority vested in me by the moon goddess herself, I crown you queen of the Northern Territories. Elder Mara lifted the crown and placed it upon Aria's head over the circlet. May your reign bring peace to the troubled and justice to the wronged. The weight of the crown settled on Aria's head, and for a moment, she thought she might collapse under it. Then the bond flared. Zane's strength poured into her through that golden thread connecting them, steadying her, supporting her. And she realized she'd never have to bear this weight alone. That was the gift of the mate bond. The gift he'd given her that night at the auction when he'd said those two simple words. That one. Aria turned to face the crowd, and her voice rang out clear and strong. I know many of you question whether I deserve this crown. Whether someone who couldn't shift, who has no pack name, who was sold like property just 3 months ago, whether someone like that can truly be queen. She let the question hang in the air. The answer is, I don't know. But I'm going to spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of the chance you're giving me tonight. I'm going to fight for every Omega who's been told they're worthless. For every wolf who's been rejected by their pack. For everyone who stands where I once stood on the edge of darkness, convinced their story ends in tragedy. Her hands began to glow, soft silver light emanating from her palms. But this time, she didn't try to contain it. She let it grow, let it spread, until waves of gentle power washed over the entire crowd. And everywhere the light touched, wolves gasped. Old injuries healed. Chronic pains faded. Scars that had marked them for years smoothed away. It wasn't dramatic, she wasn't trying to show off. She was simply offering what she had. The gift the Moonborn had always possessed. Healing. When the light faded, the crowd stood in stunned silence. Then someone began to howl. Not in challenge or aggression, but in celebration. In acceptance. And within seconds, thousands of wolves joined in, a chorus of voices lifted to the moon, welcoming their new queen. Aria felt tears streaming down her face as the sound washed over her. Zane moved to stand beside her, his arm wrapping around her waist, and they stood together as their kingdom sang. Hours later, after the festivities had died down and most of the crowd had dispersed, Aria and Zane stood alone on the balcony of their private chambers. Do you ever think about that night? Aria asked, leaning back against his chest. The auction. Every day, Zane said, his arms tightening around her. I think about how close I came to never finding you. If I'd arrived 5 minutes later, if someone else had bid first, if... But you didn't. You were exactly where you needed to be. She turned in his arms to face him. Do you regret it? Choosing me? Everything that came after? Never. His voice was absolute. You're the best decision I've ever made, Aria. The only decision that matters. Even though I nearly got you killed? Even though you saved my life. Multiple times now. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. And not just my life. You saved the kingdom. You gave us hope when we'd forgotten what that felt like. We did it together, she corrected softly. Together, he agreed. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moon climb higher in the sky. Somewhere in the distance, Wolves still celebrated, their songs carrying on the wind. I never thought I'd have this, Aria said quietly. A home. A family. Someone who looks at me the way you do. How do I look at you? Like I'm your whole world. You are. His answer was immediate and certain. From the moment I saw you on that platform, small and scared and so damn strong, you became my world. My mate. My queen. My everything. She rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring everything she felt into that simple touch. Gratitude. Love. The bone-deep certainty that she was finally where she belonged. When they pulled apart, Zane rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Aria. I should have said it before now, but I know. She smiled through her tears. I've felt it through the bond every day since the battlefield. But it's nice to hear the words. Then I'll say them every day for the rest of our lives. I love you too, she whispered. My alpha. My mate. My impossible, wonderful choice. Below them, the kingdom settled into peaceful sleep. A kingdom that had been on the brink of war 3 months ago, but was now united under a king and queen who ruled not through fear, but through love. And in a tower high above it all, a girl who'd once been unwanted held the man who'd chosen her, and knew with absolute certainty that her story hadn't ended on that auction platform. It had just begun. Epilogue, 6 months later. Aria walked through the marketplace, her hood pulled up to avoid immediate recognition. Lily walked beside her, carrying a basket of supplies. You know they're going to figure out it's you eventually, Lily said with amusement. The silver glow kind of gives it away. I know. But I wanted to see how things were really going. Without the formal announcements and prepared speeches, Aria paused at a stall selling herbs. How's your family doing? Your brother, he was sick, wasn't he? Completely recovered, thanks to you. Lily's voice was warm. He asks about you constantly. Wants to know if the stories are true, if you really glow like moonlight and can heal anything. Tell him the truth. I'm just a girl who got lucky. You're so much more than that, a voice said from behind them. They turned to find an elderly Omega woman, her face lined with age, but her eyes bright. She bowed deeply. Forgive me, Your Majesty. But I had to thank you. My granddaughter, she was rejected by her pack last month. Wolfless, like you were. She wanted to die. The woman's voice cracked. But I told her about you. About how the queen herself was once unwanted. And now, she smiled through tears. Now she believes she might have a future after all. Aria's throat tightened. Where is she? Your granddaughter. Working at the orphanage you founded. She wants to help other children who feel like she did. She sounds wonderful, Aria said softly. Tell her the best revenge against people who underestimate you is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. The woman bowed again and disappeared into the crowd. Lily squeezed Aria's arm. You're changing the world, you know. One heart at a time. We're changing it, Aria corrected. All of us together. They continued through the marketplace, and everywhere Aria looked, she saw evidence of that change. Omegas walking with their heads held high. Mixed-rank couples shopping together without fear of judgment. Children playing without regard for hierarchy or status. It wasn't perfect. There were still those who clung to the old ways, who resented the new order. But slowly, steadily, the kingdom was healing. When Aria returned to the estate that evening, Zane was waiting for her in their chambers. He took one look at her face and smiled. Good day, he asked. The best. She moved into his arms, resting her head against his chest. I met an Omega today whose granddaughter was rejected for being wolfless. But because of our story, she didn't give up. She found purpose instead. That's happening all over the kingdom, Zane said quietly. You've given hope to wolves who thought they had none left. We've given hope, she corrected again. He chuckled, the sound rumbling through his chest. You're never going to let me take full credit, are you? Never. We're a team, remember? Together. Together, he echoed, tilting her face up to kiss her. And as the sun set over the Blackthorn estate, As the first stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Aria thought about the girl she'd been just 9 months ago. The girl standing on the auction platform, convinced her life was over. That girl would never have believed this was possible. But sometimes, Aria had learned, the best stories begin at the moment you think everything is ending. Sometimes destiny finds you when you're standing among the unwanted. Sometimes a king walks into an auction house and says 2 words that change everything. That one. And sometimes, just sometimes, the broken girl becomes a queen. Not because she was perfect. Not because she had all the answers. But because she had the courage to believe she deserved a chance. And that, Aria knew, was the most powerful magic of all. Thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, please drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment. Was it when Zane first chose Aria? When she saved him on the battlefield? The coronation? I want to know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join this amazing pack. We've got so many more emotional, addictive stories coming your way. Until next time, remember, you are worthy. You are enough. And your story is just beginning.